welcome to the 20-something podcast.
Hi, thank you.
So Sean is an online lifestyle and fitness coach, primarily working with people to overcome alcohol and drug addiction to unlock their full potential. Sean shares his story online and has had a hugely transformational 20s, from being in the military for 4 years to being a global DJ as one half of the Willis brothers, overcoming addiction himself to launching his own business, and I'm sure we'll dive into all of this in this podcast. I thought that Sean would be a great guest, as his 20s really were a journey, and he's had so many paths which have now led him to helping other people, which is brilliant. So Sean, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so with all of my guests, I basically just go back to the beginning. As I just mentioned in that intro, your 20s had bit of a journey, like all different things happening, which is great. But yeah, if you could just take us back to the beginning of your 20s and just give us an overview. Some people do go a little bit further back if they need to, but yeah, generally just like an overview.
Yeah,
of your 20s.
Do you know, I'm actually excited for this one, because sometimes in a podcast I'll go too far back.
Right.
So this time I'm going to start when I was 20.
Okay.
So when I was 20, I joined the military. Before that, just when I was in my very early 20 years old, I was a personal trainer at the time. So I was very much into fitness, but I'd had a backstory before that with drugs and alcohol that led me to the point of finding fitness. Then I joined the RAF regiment when I was 20 years old, which at the time a lot of people were shocked with, because I was never seemed the type to join the military. I was very anti anyone telling me to do. And I spent 4 years in the RAF regiment. I did Afghanistan in 2010. I spent 6 months there. When I got back from Afghanistan, I sort of knew that was the time that I wanted in the military. I'd got everything out of it. And then I went back into the fitness industry. I was a personal trainer at Virgin Active. I moved to Southend-on-Sea because me and my brother, very close. From basically when he turned 18, we become inseparable. And I moved there, and I absolutely loved it. And then when I was personal training, I got offered. One of my clients actually mentioned that there was a job going as an aviation firefighter at Southend Airport, because they had just extended the airport and they were taking on new firefighters, basically. I don't think I've not told, I've never come out with this publicly, actually, because it's, the story's so long. But I applied for the role, and I got the job, and I couldn't believe it. I just spent 4 years in the military, come back to this job as a personal trainer, absolutely loved it. I was doing really well. I was fit, I was healthy, and I was very confident with my abilities. So I applied for the job, got the job, and I spent 3 months in Aberdeen as an aviation firefighter. This is the time as well with Facebook where everyone changed their status on anything that I did. So it went from military to personal trainer to now firefighter. I told everyone. And I spent 3 months there. Then I ended up getting sacked for gross misconduct, which was through alcohol, basically. I ended up drinking too much on the final day after they spent £20,000 on my training, putting out planes, pretty much every day. And the last day I got far too drunk. And there was complaints in the hotel. It was very embarrassing, and they sacked me. So after that, I sort of felt a little lost, because I'd already fallen out of love for the personal training because my newfound venture with this job as an aviation firefighter. So I went back as a PT, but my heart really wasn't in it, and I started to go out and party a lot at this point. I was going out at the weekends, and we started going to like house events in Southend, and a couple of our friends there were like DJs, and one thing led to another, and before I know it, I was a DJ, which I'm sure we'll go into. Just a very brief overview here, and then I left my career in fitness and sort of went on to this new venture. We got a couple of lucky breaks. Me and my brother ended up moving to London, and that ended up being my career until up until my late 20s, actually into my 30s. So that is a brief overview of my 20s.
Yeah. Well, do you think there's like a one key moment there then? I feel like there's quite a few, like, I can imagine the military was a massive thing, especially going to Afghanistan for 6 months.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you experienced crazy things, learnt a lot.
Yeah.
And then coming back, finding yourself, finding your feet, knowing what to do. Like, is there like one key, like, to find a moment in your 20s, you think, that kind of had a change or kind of shaped to where you are now?
It was the military, for sure. That it changed my whole life. It gave me purpose. It gave me self-discipline, self-control, and I think it just gave me the ability to sort of work towards goals and targets, and that was something that, even though it was not related, like, for my career as a DJ, it was as well, in a sense, because I was so sure of myself and confident with my abilities, as a DJ when I was starting on, and I had so much discipline and passion for it that I was able to, project that into a career. Even though the further into my career it got, the less disciplined and the less routine I had, it was, for sure, it was the military. I don't think really anything that I have achieved would have, again, in hindsight, but I don't think it would have been possible without, spending that time in the military.
Yeah, no, I saw that you had done a post on that recently. I think it was for Armed Forces Day,
Absolutely,
maybe.
Yeah.
And you had the RISE acronym and everything you had learnt from it. And I was like, wow,
Yeah,
that's stuff that you don't even really think of if you're someone, like, I don't have any friends or family in the military. I've not really been brought up around it. I don't know much about it. But reading that post, I was like, wow, there's a lot that goes on and that you get from it. Like, I've watched SAS and all of these things where it's like the discipline and it's crazy. So.
Yeah, do you know, it's funny as well, because when I was in the military, I didn't feel like I was, like, institutionalized into that. Like, I 4 years, it's sort of like the minimum time. I've had friends that have done 9, 12, longer than that. And I felt I transitioned into civilian society again very easily.
Yeah.
But, when I look back at it, I the rise, the respect, integrity, and service before self, and just the discipline side of it, I don't think I realised how much of an impact that actually had on me, and especially now looking back, when I've been able to reconnect with, my discipline in my 20s that I had now into my 30s, it's become even more present, I suppose. So
and obviously a big part of your story is, and what you do now is overcoming, like, alcohol issues. And do you think being in the military kind of stopped that because you weren't around it, or the discipline, etc.? And do you think that kind of had an influence then when you left?
Yeah, so I was still drinking. I've always had a problem with alcohol, even when I was like, from when I was like 14, 15. It started very young. When I was in the military, there were certain things that happened because of alcohol that got me in, difficult situations. But because, there wasn't the opportunity to go out and get, wrecked and on it, and we weren't really in that situation very often, it did leave bigger gaps away from it. So absolutely. And then obviously we've going before Afghanistan and going to Afghanistan and coming back from Afghanistan is like, it's quite a big period. It's like over a year's time there, probably longer. So again, your whole focus is on that. And it took my mind away from drinking. So
yeah. And then leading into DJing, you touched on it slightly, but how did that happen? And what was that lifestyle like? I know that you lived in Berlin for a while. Talk us through that, how you got into that and to grow to be quite, again, I don't know much about the DJ scene, but I know you were quite well known. You played amazing places and obviously moved to Berlin for a career in it. So talk us through that, how that happened. Yeah,
so when me and my brother, we first started to find an interest in house music, so I wasn't really, it's something, prior to me living in Southend, I'd never once said that I wanted to be a DJ. Like, I didn't even really know what it was. But we bought a set of decks, like the CDJs they are. And we started practicing, we started having after parties and practicing. And then I really found, like, this is something that I could do. So at the time, what you do is you'd you'd create a mix. So you'd record a mix like an hour long of like all your favorite tunes, and then you'd send it to people like promoters and stuff like that. And at the time, my job that I got after leaving, getting sacked from the fire service was at Essex University in Southend as like a health and fitness sort of consultant for students. But surprisingly, there was not too much work to do. So I spent a lot of it on Facebook. And what I used to do is anyone that I see on Facebook who had any sort of music affiliation in the profile picture, I would message them straight away, be like, "Hey, I'm Sean from the Willers Brothers. Like, here's my mix." And after maybe 1,000 messages, because I was very persistent with it as well. I was really dedicated to this. After God knows how many, someone replied and said, we really like the mix. We've got a DJ competition, and I'd played out a couple of times in Southend at this time, but nothing, big, just like little bars and friends, events and stuff like that. And they said, "Oh, we've got a DJ competition in Vauxhall." So me and my brother went down. A few of our friends come as well, and we did this. It was like on a Wednesday, and we went, and it went really well. And the promoter, what I didn't realize at the time is what they were looking for is DJs to come and play to bring more people to the party. But he rings me up anyway after it and said, "Look, you did really well. We've got a gig for you at Egg in King's Cross in London on Friday." I think it was like the week after. He's like, "Can you do it?" And I was like, I could not believe it. I was like, "Oh my days!" And what it was is you do something. It's like you sell a ticket. So the idea is the promoters get these DJs in, so they bring their friends and sell tickets. You get like £5 back from the ticket, and everyone wins because you bring people, you get to play. The promoter, has more people at his event, and they're like sub promoters of these big clubs. Anyway, so we went down and like we sold 50 tickets, like 50 people come. It was amazing. Like the gig went really well. And then he messaged me the next week. He's like, "Look, this is like November, I think." He's like, "Look, we've got another slot for you. It's New Year's Eve at Egg."
Oh, wow.
In like, again, this is like room free or something. But again, me and Liam couldn't believe it. We were like, "This is it." So we did it. Same again, 50 tickets sold. But this time, what happened is that like two of the DJs playing after us, they didn't turn up. So me and Liam ended up playing 3 hours, and one of the promoters who works for the actual club, not like a sub-promoter, was there, and he spent the whole night. And him and Liam, my brother, started talking, and they really hit it off. He's like, yeah, come and play for us again. And then after that, that was it. Then Egg, every single weekend, we would go from Southend to Egg and get like the first train back in the morning at like 6 o'clock or something. And we just did that for a long time until sort of we had an ultimatum where like my boss was like, "You're either DJ or you're working here," because I'd be coming in, still wrecked from the weekend. Yeah. My fitness was getting less and less, and my interest for it. And the promoter Hans at Egg was like, "Look, if you want this to happen, come and move to London." So that was it. We sort of within a matter of weeks. I quit my job. Liam quit his job. We moved to London. We got an apartment on Brick Lane, and it was like in a house share of like 8 other people, and it was like me and my brother. How old? I think I was like 24. I might have been 25 at the time, and we were sharing a room again, like 2 single beds on Brick Lane. Like no job, no idea what I was going to do. Just sort of threw ourselves into it, and it was fantastic. It was wild. Like it really was. Like we were going out all the time. We started meeting a lot of people in London, a lot of promoters. There's another guy called Johnny Fiore, who's absolutely amazing guy. And he, this is when Brick Lane at the time was really vibrant. It was, every Sunday it was packed, like 93 feet was packed. There was like Rhythm Factory at the end. And we used to like flyer for Rhythm Factory until it opened, then we'd go and run down and play like the first set. But it was great. We loved it. And then that was it. That was sort of like our in-end to the music industry. We at Egg, which is a huge club in King's Cross. Like if anyone doesn't know it, it's like it used to be really, really big, for Friday nights and Saturday nights for house and techno. and we ended up playing there like every Friday. Then it was like every Friday and Saturday, and then we become residents there. So
Wow.
so that was sort of how we got her in. It was like a lot of different factors: luck, persistence, and and just throwing everything at it.
Yeah, no, I like that. We've spoken a lot on this podcast about luck and persistence as well.
Yeah.
Whether there is such thing as you're just lucky, you get a lucky shot, or is it, you can have a lucky shot, but there's always the work that you put in behind the scenes beforehand, because you weren't just born a DJ, you put all that work in, you messaged all those people, you had all of your sets, everything, and then you kind of had that lucky break with DJs not turning up at Egg, and then you could play more, met the guy, all of that. So slight luck, but not without everything that you put into it as well.
Absolutely. Like we were, that was it then. It was like, it just took over a whole life. So I agree. I think we say luck, but it's also all the hard work and effort that goes into it as well. I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there who have similar opportunities but just don't take them. So I think that's where the luck was, is that we went all in on that opportunity.
You backed yourself to be like, I can play at Egg. I can do it.
But then that was sort of where my fitness just got less and less and less, and my partying got more and more and more. And I think for me, it was very much not just about the music. The music was sort of like a secondary thing to more the lifestyle and the partying that I enjoyed. And that took its toll as time went on, because we were playing Egg, like Friday, Saturday. I was living at Old Street, and then we'd do like pre-parties midweek as well for Egg. So sometimes I'd be going out Wednesday through till Thursday, 1 day rest, then it'd be Friday, Saturday, rolling through Sunday, probably till Monday.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was at the time I didn't really notice, but looking back now, I'm like, wow, I don't know how I even survived it. So
maybe it's that luck again.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so you moved to Berlin after that. Again, was that just an opportunity with the DJ scene?
Absolutely. So we'd been at Egg for like 3 years at this point, and it was starting to run its toll. Like, I was taking a mick a little bit. I was there drinking for free, first in, last out. They have like a green room in there, where all the DJs come and that, and we'd just be going there and just abusing it, drinking, using drugs, a lot of drugs at this point, a lot of cocaine I was using, and then I went to Berlin one time with my old military friend, Pete. We just went through it. He's like, look, I'm going to go to Berlin. Do you want to come? I was like, okay, great. And I already knew of quite a lot of DJs there because it was very much in our sort of sound, our niche. And I went and I was like, wow, this is incredible. It really took me away because have you been to Berlin?
Yeah.
Especially if you're creative, there's just something about that city. I couldn't believe it.
It's just like a buzz. You can
it gives me goosebumps thinking about it. That first time, and I come back and I was like, Liam, Berlin, this is it. And then what happened is that we started getting into a few DJs there. There's a group called Bestus Modus, and it was like just a selection. It was like Simphy, Diego Kraus, Nick Berry. Anyway, they only played records, and at the time, me and Liam, we couldn't play records, but all the releases were on record. So I was like, Liam, we've got to learn how to play vinyl now. So we started learning to play vinyl, and then at Egg, they give us an opportunity to like put a party on at or like help run the party, and we booked Simphy and Diego Kraus and Ed Herbs, and they come down. And I'd already started speaking to Simphy a little bit. She's huge now. She's absolutely blowing up. Like she's smashing it. And they come down. They played at Egg, and we all got along. And I was like chatting to Simphy loads. And then Diego and Ed come back to an after party at mine, and like we all had his records. Like everyone that was there, it was like he nearly missed his flight. It was an incredible time. And then after that, like Simphy messaged me. She's like, "Look, I want you to come play in Berlin for us." And we played at Griesmuller, and it was the first time we played. And me and Liam, we just couldn't believe it. Like the gig was so good. Like just the crowd in Berlin. Like they don't have. It's not about like image. There's no phones and stuff like that. Like, even though it's very difficult to get into Berlin clubs, that's only because they want the right people in the clubs.
Yeah.
Whereas in London, it's really about the headline DJ, which costs thousands of pounds, which means the ticket price is ramped up, which is so high, which means that the promoter's got to let everyone in. Whereas in Berlin, you'll go to a place called Club Division Air, they'll have some of the best DJs in the world on, and you'll pay like €3 to get in. But if you don't look right, you're not going to get in.
Yeah.
And that culture, it was fantastic. It was like no phones on the dance floor, everyone just having an amazing time. The clubs would open from Friday and close on Monday, so this is perfect for me. So after that, then we played that first gig, and we did exactly the same with what we did with Egg and travelling there, but in Berlin. The only thing is, obviously, it was a lot longer. So what we do is we literally play the gigs at Egg at the weekend, get a flight to Berlin on like a Monday, stay there till Thursday. Especially if Symphony was playing, we'd go to like watch her gigs and stuff like that, and just like submerge herself in the culture and the scene and the people there, and just show our face. And then eventually Symphony just said to us the same sort of thing, or the same thing that Hans said to us with Egg. She was like, look, if you want to make this work, like move over. And at that point, Egg had sort of had enough, and like, especially me, not so much my brother, but definitely me, because I was turning up. I'd be, bearing in mind I'm like the resident DJ there, I'd be like on the bar, like sprawled out after drinking too much, or which, looking back now, was really disrespectful of me, because Egg, like the owner there, Lawrence Malley, he's like an absolute icon in the scene. Like, he used to run a party called Trade at Turnmills, which was huge. It was like a massive party. Like, they turned away, I think it was like Madonna at the door and stuff. Like, that's how how big the event was. Anyway, and that was it. Then we moved to Berlin then. But the same thing, just no idea. Like, basically Ed, he said, look, you can take my apartment, which was like an old studio apartment, nothing in it, for like 3 months. And I was like, let's do it.
Yeah.
So we moved.
Wow. And then with that, obviously, you spent time in Berlin.
Yeah.
How did it all kind of come to an end with the DJ scene? What was like the turning point for you?
Yeah. So when we moved to Berlin, the first year in Berlin was unbelievable. We got a residency at Watergate. We were like in the studio. We were getting guest lists at Berghain and stuff like that. It was so cool. Like, I felt a part of the scene, which still now is a little surreal. But the problem is that I was already doing a lot of cocaine at this point, and moving to Berlin, where like everyone's a creative there, so no one's doing a 9 to 5. Not in our, obviously there are people, but not people that I knew. It was just partying all the time. It was, even in the studio I'd be using cocaine, and then me and Symphony fell out because of that. At the time, I blamed everyone. It was never me or cocaine's fault or drinking, but it clearly was, and that just got worse and worse and worse. And the first year was good, and then the second year, and then by the third year, it was like I was really struggling. I was getting kicked out of places. We got kicked off a lot of agencies. Our gigs were getting slower. Me and Liam weren't getting along as much. There was a lot of pressure for music because I just wasn't creative. And then the lockdowns happened,
right?
Which, like, for me was a massive turning point for me there as well. But that then leads into just the whole change. The thing is now, for me, this period now this is taking me out of my 20s now. This is the only thing. So
that's fine.
So when the lockdowns happened, that was just it was a massive wake up call, because we lost all our gigs. I had no savings. I couldn't speak German. Everyone else just left. Me and Liam unfortunately didn't have that that option. And I was like, oh, whoa, okay. I'm using drugs all the time. I'm drinking all the time. Had to get a job. And the only job that was taking on non-English speakers was Amazon. And it was night shifts. And it was like just moving the boxes, basically. And I was like, oh, my days, like, is this what my life has come to now? I've gone from, touring the world. We played in Moscow. We played in Brazil. We played all over, we played in Europe every single week. So, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me, because it stopped all of that for a considerable amount of time, and it made me start to get some routine and some structure again with my life. So
Yeah, so it wasn't so much of like you almost deciding you needed a change. I think it was like a bit of, you kind of knew maybe, but the lockdown kind of pushed that.
Exactly, we were forced into a corner, because I think this is the thing with so many, not so many people, but I've seen it a lot with, and it definitely would have happened to me and my brother, is that, you know, we'd spent, you know, the best part of our late 20s in, you know, trying to be DJs. And the thing is with DJs, like, there's like a tier system, you know, which I'm sure it's the same with every artist, you know. It's like you go up a tier, but then it still doesn't feel like, you know, you've got anything. It's like, I want to do more, I want to be bigger. And we'd spent the best part of, you know, our late 20s trying to do that. And it's really hard to recognize when to call it a day. It really is, because obviously you always think, well, what if? But at the same time, I was doing everything that I was doing was like almost pushing me away from where I wanted to be. So yeah, it forced a corner, but it wasn't until I really hit rock bottom when I decided enough was enough. So when the lockdowns stopped, we went onto a new agency, and they had big plans for us. So we planned to move back to the UK, which was July 2021, and at the time the new agency, and it was a really respectable agency actually, and we were working with some people that are really respected. It almost felt like a new lease of life. But in that, you know, couple of year period, I can't remember how long it all lasted, that period. It seems so
3 years, I think.
Could have been 3 years. Could have been 30, could have been 3 months. But in Berlin, it was a lot of self-reflection and a lot of self-development as well, and really working on myself. My brother was doing the same. So I cut down. I wasn't sober for sure, but I was not partying, you know, as much, because we didn't have an opportunity for it. And I was staying with my brother. I was literally sleeping on his sofa because I had nowhere else to go. It was either there or the studio. But our studio was in the east of Berlin, and it was very grey and grim. So also because of that, I couldn't go out and get on it, because my brother's, you know, I was staying with him, and he knew it was the worst thing for me. Anyway, so then July we moved back, and we had like 10 shows in England. We got the tour of Australia with Sash, 4 shows there, 4 shows in New Zealand, which was supposed to happen before the lockdowns. Yeah. And I was like, right, this is it. But my brother, he had already decided that he'd already wanted to walk away, because he'd seen the damage that it was doing to him and to us, and he just had enough with it. But for me, I still was hanging on to it. You know, I still was thinking, what if? And I was going to do it all sober. And I did my first gig July. It's actually like it'll be next week. Yeah. Will be 3 years since this happened, but it was I was going to do it all sober. So I had my first gig in Nottingham. My brother, I remember me and my brother had a big argument in Bournemouth, because I got the call saying, "Oh, you know, Australia's confirmed, dates are in." Brother's like, "I don't care, I'm not doing it." So I had to ring back my agent. I was like, "Look, James, Liam,
I can do it solo."
Yeah, and that's what he said. He's like, "Don't worry, we'll bill it as the Willers Brothers. You can do it solo." So the first gig was in Nottingham. I went up to do it. I was like, I'm not drinking. I started playing. I was like, right, I'll have one drink. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in hospital, and I had like a scar here, and that was it, man. I knew that was it.
You knew that was the point.
That was
it.
You know, I couldn't do it anymore. So.
Yeah. And from that, like, what has been the biggest thing that you've learned? So you said almost 3 years now since you've been sober. What is the biggest thing that you've learned from it, do you think?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I've learned is that without alcohol and drugs, I've got so much more potential. You know, I think just not having that 2 or 3 days every week that I miss just means that I can achieve so much more than I ever thought was possible, especially, you know, them days in the military or like when I first started DJing. It's like, I could have achieved so much more than that probably if you know, if I wasn't drinking, but for sure, like it's been you know, a rough road. Like I'm actually over 11 months sober because I relapsed, but But even that's been like a learning process.
Yeah.
So
That's a big achievement.
yeah, I'm looking forward to hitting that year,
Yeah,
actually. So,
yeah, that year will be a big mark.
Yeah.
So for anyone who maybe feels like they're in a bit of a cycle, and maybe they might not want to go completely sober, but just want to change their relationship or break a cycle. It doesn't even have to be with drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
But what would be your advice to kind of make that change? You've obviously made quite a drastic one.
Yeah. So for me, the first things for myself on my own journey was intermittent fasting. Was the first one. When I started doing that, it reconnected me with my self-control and my discipline, which obviously I built up from that time in the military.
Yeah.
And I was like, actually, I'm fully in control. And I felt so many times like when I was DJing, when I had these problems with drink and drugs and partying, it was, I always felt out of control, like, oh, I can't do it, or or it couldn't, this is just me. It was fasting and then exercise. And I think if you want to break a cycle, always, I mean, if it's drugs and alcohol, there's, therapy, AA, NA, which I tried all them, but for me, it didn't work. So then it was like, well, what am I going to do? The next thing was having a sport specific or like a body transformative goal, because having that sort of target and goal, it gave me something to work towards. And I felt the other times when I tried to break the cycle or change, I just was saying it on a Monday, but then it was like, well, but what? I'm not changing anything at all. So it was like fasting gave me that self-control. It gave me that discipline. It gave me the ability to realize that the decisions that I make, are going to change the outcome.
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, well, let's set a target. Let's set a goal to actually work towards. And fitness based or physical based is always the best one in my opinion to focus on, because it's so visual and you can see it and feel it almost.
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, I was going to ask you that because I saw on your Instagram and stuff you're quite big at talking about why it's so important to have not just a goal but to take the action as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why is that so important? A lot of us, I think, maybe even on a monthly basis, every 6 months or so, we'll set some goals, but actually having that plan and taking action, like why is that so important?
Well, because otherwise it's very easy to say it on a Monday. Like, this is what I used to do every single week. Like, I'd go, especially when I was a DJ, I'd go and I'd have a gig and I'd drink too much or something would happen. I'd be like, I'm not doing this again. But that'd be it. I'd say that my goal was to not drink and party and to sort my life out. But then come Wednesday, I'd forgotten about it again and, started to feel better, and it would just repeat that cycle. So I think by actually setting yourself a specific date and target, it's like, by this date, I want to look like this, or by this date, I want to run a half marathon at this time. You're being more specific at it. So you've got an actual focus, like you've got something to run towards. I think the thing that I found is that I was running away for something for so long. I never had anything that I was actually running towards to take my mind away from that. So I think the more specific you can get with your goal, the more you've got to sort of zone in on, and not focus about what you're running away from.
Yeah, I like that. You're running away but not running towards anything.
Exactly,
I've not thought of it like that before, because I think a lot of us have felt like that, whether that's like a relationship, a job, whatever. You can be kind of running away from something, but you've got to have that like next steps that what you're working towards and building those little things. No, that's really important. I like that. And so for us as well, like, I know you work a lot with your clients and unlocking their full potential. Give us some tips, give us some steps on how we can all do that.
Absolutely. So I think it's about building a foundation. Like, this is something that, like, my 20s was such a contrast, because I had the first part of my 20s in the military where I had discipline, routine, structure, drive, focus, and I felt I was really successful in that. My back part of my 20s were, okay, still an experience for sure. And we had some great success with a career in music, but there was no routine, there was no structure, there was no discipline, there was no real target or goal. Yeah. So I think first it's about building a foundation for routine. Something that we always teach in Willer's Fitness is, like, literally, I call it the foundations. It's fasting, daily intermittent fasting of just 12 hours, and actually holding yourself accountable to that. So I always use this app called Fastic, because you can literally press, fast or start or stop fast. Then it's focusing on eating more whole foods. And I think more just for the fact that if, rather than saying I want to go on a specific diet, if you focus on eating more whole foods, you're going to feel better. You're going to, again, have something to think about, and then daily movement. Once you've sort of got that structure of the foundation, it's then you're able to evolve that then, and then go into some sort of specific target or goal.
Yeah.
But for sure, I think it's about building that solid foundation.
Yeah. No, it's so true. I feel like you've had quite like a full circle moment almost with like the discipline, everything that you learned, as you said, from the military, and now you're doing that yourself, but you're also teaching other people through your coaching how to do it. And I think that's really nice, actually, that you've had this like journey throughout your 20s into your 30s, and it's kind of come back to the beginning of where it started. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, I think that because my early 20s was such a pivotal moment for me in my life. It's like I feel that I'm going to have that again now, but with everything that I learned in my 20s. It's like I learned this discipline, this self-control, this what I can achieve, and then I put all that into music, but then I lost a lot of the discipline and the self-control, and for me it was through drugs and alcohol. So now I think I've got another opportunity to now I've reconnected with discipline, self-control, all that good stuff, and my fitness as well, but this time doing it sober, which I feel was like my crutch in my 20s.
And now you've got the superpower just to push you forward.
Exactly, yeah.
No, I like that, because that's what this podcast is about as well. Like you mentioned yourself, you're not in your 20s anymore, but there can be so much that you learn from it, no matter what your 20s were like, that you can take forward. And I think sometimes we all panic a bit, like, oh, you're getting older, whatever, but there's so much that your 20s influence throughout your whole life, I think, not even just your 30s, your 40s, like there's so much you learn from it. So I like that you said that you can take that then forward into the next part of your life.
Yeah, I think what it's also, I actually, it's funny, like when I think about this, because when I first started my journey, like, this new journey again, I was in my 30s, and I remember having a conversation with my mum, and I was like, these are my exact words. I was like, I wish I'd started doing this years ago, because I'm never going to get back to the sort of fitness or have that physique or be as like self-disciplined as I was when I was in my 20s. And it was so wrong, because now I'm so much fitter and more disciplined, and I've got more drive, and I look better than I did when I was at my 20s. But when I first started my journey, for that thought, I was like, I'm 30 now, this is it, it's over. Yeah. But it wasn't. And I think it's because I've sort of been able to take everything that I learned in my 20s and then just pick out what I did wrong and improve that.
Exactly. There's always that time to change it, right? No matter what age you are.
Absolutely.
It doesn't just have to be because you're 20 that you can make that start. There's always a change. So thinking about that, is your life now where you thought it ever would be?
No, I don't think it's ever going to be where I thought it's going to be, to be honest. Like from my teens to my 20s to my 30s, it just keeps getting no, not at all. No. Honestly, I to be honest, when I moved from London to Berlin, even when I moved back from Berlin to England, I didn't move back to London. I moved to Southampton, and I even said, I think when I first left London, I was like, I'll never be back here. I'll never be living here again, and here I am. So
you never know when it can change.
You never know, but I think it's just so exciting. Yeah. That's again what's exciting me now, is that luckily I was fortunate enough to get out of, I'm able to escape my late 20s from the sort of cycle that I was trapped in. But now it's made me realise that actually, like, the potential is endless now, and it excites me for where I'm going to be when I am 40 or when I am 50.
I like that. It makes me excited for you.
Yeah.
So, and with that, do you think your outlook has changed as well then, like in terms of what you think about where you should be or what life path should take?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think when I was, definitely in my late 20s, I felt so trapped. I was like, because again, it was like the fear of getting into my 30s, thinking is this going to be me? Am I going to be some washed up DJ trapped in Berlin? And again, going back to the luck thing, I was like quite lucky that opportunity happened at the time to help me break that cycle. But now I am where I am right now. I just think anything is possible. Like really, I've got really sucked into all these not self-help books, but like a lot of the ones on Audible where they're saying like your potential is limitless, and I really believe that now. I really believe it's possible.
No, I do as well. So for anyone who does want to go sober, top 3 tips for them.
Yeah, great. Top 3 tips. Number 1 is exercise for sure. I think you need some sort of stimulation, some release, and for me personally, everything outside, I've never really found that with, from anything else but exercise. I think the next is to make sure you're in the right circle of people. Again, when I was in that cycle, I used to blame everyone else. Now I'm out of it. I know it was my own fault, but also I was aware that even though it's no one's fault who I'm around for me, taking drugs or drinking, I'm definitely more aware that if I'm with certain individuals and they're all getting on it, then I'm much more likely to do it. So I think surrounding yourself with the right people, inspirational people as well, people that you look up to, which again takes time, but don't be afraid to leave people behind, because there'll be this sort of transition, but you will find the right people. And then lastly, just be patient with it as well. Everything takes time at the end of the day. Like when you first go sober and start this journey, it feels weird. Like for me, I had to leave behind a career in DJing. At the time I was just like, whoa, what am I actually good? Like, what am I going to do? Like, I have no idea. What have I got to offer anyone? Obviously putting DJ down on a CV, I was thinking, it's like Googling, like, what are the benefits from this? But with patience, it gets easier. And even now, I'm so open with this. Even though my journey started July 2021, I've still relapsed like 11 months ago. And I think at the time I was like, oh, what have I done? But it's just part of the journey, It's part of the journey. It's like, I learned so much from that. And I think patience was so important there, because I could have just thought, well, this is not for me. It's never going to happen. And then go back into my old ways. But actually just learning from it and being patient and has got me, to where I am now.
Exactly.
So.
I think it is what you learn from it, and being able to carry on moving forward, even if it's just small little steps.
Absolutely.
You still carried on doing that, and now look where you are.
Exactly, There's never one big pivotal moment at the time. It's just all them little daily changes that you're doing, and then you look back and think, whoa, okay, I've come this far.
Yeah, and it's taken that time, I think, to reflect on that also, because a lot of the time we're so busy in life, we're so go, and you don't actually stop to think, oh, okay, where was I 6 months ago or a year ago?
Exactly.
Wow, actually, in that time, this has happened. Or I've met this person, or I've changed this. And taking that time to just reflect back.
And that's what I love about not drinking and using drugs now, is just you've got to be so present with your thoughts and feelings. And sometimes it is so difficult. And I think, oh, I could just go out now and just have one drink and a line but I know that's not going to happen. So you've got to be so much more present with how you're actually feeling and deal with that properly.
Yeah, dealing with your emotions.
Which is like a whole new journey on its own. But
we could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah, exactly. But then that's also exciting, because what I've realised is like there is no end goal for me. It's just to continually get better. For even with this is what I love about fitness as well, is that it can the dynamic has changed for me. Like when I first started, I was doing running. Now it's like weight training. Now I'm going to do like a natural men's physique bodybuilding show in November, which is just mental, because I never thought that was possible, but it is. And that's what this is what I love about the fitness side of it, is that goal can continually change. I don't have to pigeon myself. I could do high rocks next year if I wanted, or I could swim the channel or something, but
all of the small challenges.
yeah. But it just gives you something to focus on. For someone else, that could be you could run a 5K or you could lose 5 pounds or but it can always change and it can always give you something to work on.
Yeah, no, I like that. Well, we're coming to the end of time, unfortunately. But with all of my guests, I like to go back to the beginning a little bit and just ask them, if you could go back to the beginning of your 20s, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give yourself?
It's such a difficult question, because in hindsight, if I give myself this advice, would it be here now? It would be, I'm going to say, to not leave the routine behind, especially with exercise, to continue doing that. I think that's definitely one thing that I wish that I'd done throughout my career as a DJ, is just kept a little basic health and fitness routine and applied that self-care, because the other one would be to not use drugs. that would be, to be honest, that would be my main one. Just go sober at 20 and great things will happen. But then then maybe I would have never started a career in DJ. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong with with people drinking, I suppose. But for me, it would have been keep that connection with my health and fitness.
I like that. Keep that routine and the importance of it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's so true, because it can be applied to anything, even if people are listening and drinking and drugs aren't something they have to worry about. I think that routine is so important for any aspect of life.
Absolutely.
So I like that nugget. Thank you. So now we're coming to the end, but thank you so much, Sean, for coming on. I think that was a really great conversation, and I think we can take a lot away from it.
Yeah, thanks for having
me. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please continue to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on socials. See you next week for another episode.